Well, thanks so much for tuning into the trade setup right here on BloombergQuint Live. And after a really strong day of trade, what's next in store? I think a lot of people have raised the question marks about whether the rally will get sold into today, etc., etc. I'll try and talk about some of those aspects. But first, the global markets and the picture looks a bit benign. So futures are a little changed, but the US markets did reasonably well for themselves in trade yesterday. So rose about 332 odd points, as you can see, for the Nasdaq, but the others too did reasonably okay. So good start for the trading week for the US markets as well. And as I said, even though the futures are a little changed, I think there is cause for some decent action. Short sellers, and I think there's this chart on the Bloomberg terminal which shows how short sellers are a vanishing commodity, I think, is as they have used the term. But just there's this chart which maps what's the short interest of as a percentage of total US shares available for trading, and I think it's just coming off. It came off in 2020 for sure, but even in this year, the trend is continuing, and that tells you a story or two about what the mindset is for the global markets. The Asian screen and the SGX Nifty will next come up on your screen. And it seems to be benign, as I said. I think the Australian rate decision was right, but whatever little you can see on the Asian screen seems to be doing okay. I've not seen a red tick. So this is HSI and KOSPI, of course. But if you look at Shanghai, ASX, etc., hard to find a troubled spot in the Asian screen today. And well, that's actually good news from an Indian perspective, because with the kind of move that you had yesterday, you want the trend to continue. Just bring up the SGX Nifty once, though, first, before we move on to the other aspects. And well, a strong show. So back to 14,469, right? It was talking about 13,000 at 13,700. People are talking about the markets go down to 13,000. It doesn't usually happen that way. Was a bit oversold. Thankfully, no one knew the trigger really. I mean, I'll be lying if I say I knew the trigger, but just that the markets looked so oversold on the screen that it seemed that there'll be a bit of a bounce, and that is what we kind of spoke about all through the last week. I'm not saying we told you so. I'm just saying that at times it just makes sense to look at the screen and try and see if things look a bit oversold and the possibilities of bounce back because of the normal trend which is on the way up. Now, the FI activities turned around a little bit. I know the whole of last week there were cash market sellers. They have turned buyers yesterday. So 1494 crores. They sold nearly 13,000 crores last week, slightly over 12,000 crores. But yep, they've turned buyers yesterday. EICHER sold about 90 crores. But more importantly, on the positioning side as well, there's a very sharp bounce back. There were longs added, there were shorts covered on the index futures, and all of that should augur well. Now, what is the trade setup because of this? I would reckon that the momentum is likely to continue. Yes, there are a lot. I mean, the rally may take a breather today. I have no idea. I mean, maybe after starting off about 100 points higher, could we cool off? Sure, we could. But just look at it in the larger context. I don't think it's a cause for worry. So I think the momentum is likely to continue. Banks are at the forefront, but at some point of time, viewers, you got to bat for some of the IT and the pharma stocks to make a comeback. The results for most were positive. They have done their fair degree of correction. Even if you account for the rupee weakness or the rupee strength and the dollar weakness, I think some bit of correction has come in already. Now, yes, currently the momentum is in front of economy-facing stocks, and therefore you will have the banking, the infrastructure, the autos, etc., the CV space do really well. I think at some point of time in the next 4 or 5 days, you got to bat for some of the IT and the pharma stocks to make a comeback. So be mindful of that. In today's session, I think mid-caps and textiles, auto parts, etc., should all see some very decent buying activity. So be mindful of that. There are some interesting mid-cap earnings as well. Well, actually, speaking of earnings, there's a large cap boy in HDFC. So be mindful of that. But the mid-cap earnings are very interesting ones. Alkyl Amines has had a fabulous run-up, as has Dixon Technologies, and both of these would be in focus. We will be watching out for the kind of numbers that the commentary that Vinati Organics gives, because they have had a slightly shoddy time compared to the other specialty chemical companies. So we'll watch out for that. PI Industries battling with UPL for the top spot in that space in terms of market cap. And of course, Balrampur Chini, sugar companies likely to come out with good numbers. We'll be watching out for this as well. But the stocks to be monitored in the session today on open, and there are, I've kind of bucketed this into 2 or 3 pockets. One is the budget impact seen as per brokerages, and I think 2 names stood out for me, so I'm bringing those out first. So ITC seems to be a bit of a consensus. Credit Suisse, JP Morgan, some others have all brought out ITC as a key stock that they would be monitoring. So Morgan Stanley, or rather Credit Suisse on the budget impact says that the no increase in cigarette taxes compared to 11 to 16% increase last year is positive news. They believe that ITC is now a COVID recovery play with the cigarette volumes likely to improve consistently. And with additional levers like restructuring and FMCG growth, the stock has a path to re-rating. They have increased the target price. They've kept the target price as 255. JP Morgan, I think, has changed the target price to 225 from 195. So there is some bullishness on ITC. Let's wait and watch if it reacts. The next one is ASHOK LEYLAND, and it already has had a very good reaction, but I'm bringing out the Morgan Stanley view on ASHOK LEYLAND for you viewers. Morgan Stanley says that they maintain the overweight. The target price has been raised to 155 from 63. They say that all signs point towards an MHCV upcycle driven by the budget-led infra push, replacement demand, and better pricing, and that the scrappage policy could aid the upside. So, well, do watch out for this one. Now, the auto sales numbers that came out post-market, as Hero was a bit okay, but the two which stood out for me, EICHER, the overall sales were up about 8%, which I don't think is too bad a number really. At about 68,000 units, the exports really ramped up 4515, and we know that Siddharth Lal has been making this beeline to make Royal Enfield a big global player. It'll be interesting to see how the global piece shapes up for EICHER. The earnings commentary would give us some indication as well, so watch out for that. Watch out for VST Tillers. Escorts had a fabulous set of numbers yesterday. VST Tillers, the power tiller sales were up 14%, the tractor sales were up 25%, so very strong show by that one. Let's wait and watch if this one reacts. Then one set of numbers. There are two or three which were very decent, but I thought FINOLEX stood out for me, and therefore I'm bringing it up. Revenues were up about 53% at 1,067 crores. EBITDA was up 1.5x at 347. PAT up 1.6x at 259 crores. Overall, you couldn't find a fault with these set of numbers. So really good going, and likely that this stock will do very well in the session. That aside, a couple of other deals names. Vardhman Textiles. So the promoter Vardhman Holdings has acquired about 30,000 shares. So do watch out for that one in the session today. Last but not the least, what stood out for me was the Morgan Stanley view on the Sensex. They've raised the target to 55,000 from 50,000. They say that the budget has favored a vital fiscal deficit with a view to spur growth during the higher capex, with higher capex. So let's wait and watch if other brokerages also follow suit post-budget. But yes, the budget has certainly set the tone for what will happen during the course of the week, or probably the course of the year, really. Let's wait and watch how long the momentum rides. For now, though, it seems that it's doing okay. Let's wait and watch if it lasts. Thanks so much for tuning in today.